Hello, and welcome back to the Nourish with Purpose podcast. It's Bailey, and I hope you're having the best Wednesday or whenever you're listening to this episode. If you're new here, wanted to tell you a little bit about me, what I do, who I am. I'm an anti-inflammatory focused holistic health and nutrition coach, which really just means I take a full body approach to healing, and we focus a lot on eating good food, whole foods, and finding ways to make it enjoyable, right? You don't have to just sit and munch on a bag of lettuce or eat broccoli 24/7, but rather making meals that actually fulfill you and make you kind of find a passion for being in the kitchen and really a passion for healing your body and fueling your body right. And that really includes your mind, body, and your spirit. I talk a lot in this podcast about all three because I really think if you have a good balance in all three, you're really going to reach that point of ultimate wellness, which I think we're all probably striving for if you're listening to this podcast. Today, I'm actually starting a new series, and it's going to be all about the Core 4 method. If you follow me over on Instagram, you've probably heard of it before, or if you're a client, but the Core 4 method is really what I've discovered is the best way to make up a meal to make it both easy and filling. After you eat a meal, you shouldn't still be craving more food, right? If you have a balanced meal, you're going to leave that meal feeling comfortable, feeling full, but not feeling overly stuffed, which I think was a hard part for me in my journey is I either underate and was always hungry, always thinking about food, constantly thinking about what I would eat next, right? Or I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so uncomfortable. I ate way too much. And it was really hard for me to create that mind-body connection to actually understand my hunger and full signals. And so that all is kind of a piece of its own, which is what I would say I do most of my coaching work with clients on, is developing that mind and body connection. But today we're just going to get into the information piece of that. So talking about what makes up the Core 4 and focusing solely on protein today. So focusing on protein today, we're going to dive into all of that. But first, I wanted to catch up with you, talk about what's going on in my life, and also doing this segment of how I'm nourishing my mind, body, and spirit. So what's been going on? I feel like, I don't know, honestly. Every time I get to this point, I'm like, have I really been doing anything? I know we definitely have. I think a lot of what I've been sharing more probably on social media, and obviously social media is going to be a highlight of my life for the most part. And I try not to always make it all sunshine and rainbows, but sometimes that's just what I feel inspired to put out into the world. Anyway, I posted some updates about our house renovation process, mostly or more specifically the kitchen. This weekend, my husband Nate and I laid vinyl flooring in our kitchen, and we did vinyl flooring because at some point we're going to actually be picking up our house and moving it after we pour a new basement, which that'll be down the road, not happening within the next year. But we did vinyl because we're like, okay, if this shifts when we're moving, it's okay if it cracks, right? It's not super expensive. Anyway, so we laid that flooring down and I really, really love it. I'm actually shocked. I'm usually not like a fan of fake hardwood floor, right? We've got original hardwoods in all of our house, but in the kitchen, it's that fake vinyl flooring. But we laid that for 7 hours on Sunday. We watched church in the morning. We went to a birthday party. We're there till 2. We started the process at 3 o'clock and we were in bed by 11:30. Yeah, it was not fun. And I'm just so glad that my husband is as patient as he is, because if it was just me doing that, I probably would have quit about 10 minutes into it. Repetitive tasks like that just drive me crazy, right? So that was a whole ordeal in its own. And honestly, I feel like our weekend was not super restful, which is fine. Not every weekend is, but on Saturday then we actually went and bought the flooring, and then we had supper with Jake and Hannah. Those are our friends that live in Omaha. and we just hung out with them and some other friends this weekend and then came back. So we got home around 12:30 on Saturday night, and then on Sunday we were like, okay, we're just gonna watch church from home, and then we started that project. So we were kind of on the go, but that is okay. I know I talk a lot on here about how we love to be busy. This society loves to be busy, but it was all good things. And I think it's fun when you actually start seeing progress on things that you've been putting so much time and energy and money into, like for the kitchen, for example. And I know I've been given updates on that every single week, and it feels like it's been going on forever. But we are just waiting on a plumber. And I know that there's a lot of emergencies going on, like plumbing wise, in our area because it's been so bitterly cold. But I'm like, I would say not having a kitchen for a month and a half is kind of getting to be an emergency right now, right? Like, I need some running water because we've still been washing our dishes in the bathtub. We've still been using we have one bathroom in this house. So it's like, okay, I'm over it. Been over it. If you saw the reality of the dishes that are piled up on our kitchen table right now, you would probably be disgusted, because I am. And those are the realities that you don't see posted everywhere because it's gross and it's embarrassing. But I'm like, until we have a dishwasher, I'm done. I'm not touching these dishes. We've done that way too long. I will wait. So we're playing the waiting game, and I'll probably end up losing and washing the dishes in the bathtub, but it's fine. Outside of that, I'm trying to think what else has been going on. Really, I've just been focusing a lot this year on building muscle. And I think that's a part of, we can get into the segment of how I'm nourishing my mind, body, and spirit in that body piece, because I've just really been trying to lift heavy weight, which feels so good. And for the longest time, you go through high school and you have to lift all summer long, and you lift in the winter, and you have to do back squats and deadlifts. And by the time I was done with high school, I was so over sports. I was so over lifting heavy weight that I'm like, I just want to do some light dumbbell work. And I really have done that for a long time. Now I'm how many years out of high school? I don't even want to think about it, but I'm 2 years out of college. And so it's like, okay, I'm finally ready and excited and eager to get back into lifting heavy weight. And so we actually got a gym membership. I might have mentioned this before, but we got a gym membership in York. And so Nate and I have been going in the mornings to lift. And they have a lot of machines and obviously like a rack. So I can do deadlift and squat and all of those more, basic lifts. But it just feels really good to actually physically feel strong and to noticeably see a difference. We've only been going for probably 2.5 or 3 weeks, but it's just really fun. And it's also nice to be able to go with him in the morning. We have a good hour and a half together, and then we can go on obviously with the rest of our day with work. And it's okay if we don't really see each other too much because we got a good hour in the morning to spend together. So that's been really fun. They also have a sauna, which I've been utilizing a little bit, but yeah, it just feels good to feel strong. And I'm finally getting back into that. I definitely go in bursts, so don't think I work out all the time. I do work out every day, but that doesn't mean I always have, and I shouldn't say every day. I work out 5 to 6 days a week, but that doesn't mean I'm always excited to do it. And I don't think that's the reality for a lot of people, right? Especially people that post their workouts. It looks like they're always motivated to get into the gym. But I definitely went through a rut for probably the last 3 months where I just didn't want to. I was just so tired of it. And it helps that I found workouts that I enjoy. I enjoy doing Pilates workouts, and I use the app Form. If you ever want a discount and you want to try that out, it's by Sammy Clark. I do have a code for that. But outside of that, I honestly have just been not inspired. And I also lead exercise classes on Mondays and Wednesdays. Now, those are fun. Those give me energy. But outside of that, I'm like, I just don't want to. And so it's nice. And I think if you're somebody who's like, okay, I have no motivation to move my body, get a gym membership, because if you've got $50 to $65 going towards a membership, you're probably going to show up. Or I would hope you would. And if still that's not enough of an investment to get you to show up, then find a more expensive gym, because that financial piece is a huge reason why people start to become more consistent when they go to a gym. And I think that would be a really good step if you're like, okay, I want to move my body, but I don't know how, I don't know where. Find a place that you feel comfortable and invest in your physical health. And I would always say this, and I have to plug this, but I would honestly recommend investing in your nutritional health first and then focus on the gym. Moving your body, super important, but you can even go for a walk at home. You don't need to spend any money. But it's that nutrition piece that if that's not aligning and that's not, anti-inflammatory or not harming your body, you're really not going to see the physical results and the internal results, right? The external and internal physical results of exercise if your body is not in a place to build muscle or to feel comfortable. And when we have really inflamed bodies, and I think food, I know that is a huge contributor. When our bodies are so inflamed, it's really hard for our bodies to feel safe. And so if you're like, I've been working out constantly and no changes are happening, all right, let's focus on nutrition and actually dive into the issue, finding the root cause of that, because that's super important too. But I'll get off of my soapbox. I just have to say that as a nutrition-focused coach, that is a huge, huge piece and always one that I recommend first. Okay, so how I'm nourishing my mind. I talked about this on last week's podcast, but I've been taking a daily Stress Plus supplement. It's by Pure Encapsulations, and I'm not saying this, obviously, because I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that, or making any money by telling you this, but that has truly been a huge game changer for me, taking that. And I am someone who thought that supplements were definitely the placebo effect. And I was like, there's no validity to supplements. They're just in your mind, whatever. And at this point, I don't really care if it's in my mind or if it's actually making changes in how I feel stress-wise, because I feel so much better. I went through a phase where I just felt so exhausted and mentally drained, and I actually feel like I have energy again, which is just such a good feeling. And it's hard too when with especially me being in the position I'm in, I help other people discover that. But like when you evaluate your own lifestyle, sometimes it's a little bit harder to see. And so for me, I knew the supplement was kind of that last, shot in the dark, because I'm like, okay, let's just see if it does something. And I really feel like it has, paired with also recognizing that I can't control the future and I can't make changes happen, and it's not up to me with what happens in the next month or the next year. And that can feel really stressful if you are used to thinking you have control over everything that's happening in your life. And just realizing that you don't is very alarming, right? That can feel very, very scary. But for me, what has helped that kind of scary feeling of, oh my gosh, all of these months are going to keep coming at me and I can't control anything about them really, or at least not everything about them. But what's helped me is actually planning for the future and planning for warmer days, right? Here in Nebraska, it's freezing cold. Well, actually, we're having a heat wave right now. I have to let you know, it is 35 degrees and it feels so warm outside. Could go out in shorts and a tank top because I'm used to the -20 or -11 degrees. So planning for days that are warmer than obviously this has been really encouraging for me. I love gardening. That's something I really got into this last year. I got a pressure canner for Christmas. I've been looking at the seeds that I want to buy. I've been reaching out to a gal in Lincoln to help me get set up to raise flowers kind of at a larger scale. So that's really exciting. And just planning all of that just makes me eager. And it makes me realize, it's okay if the summer is a little bit slower when it comes to coaching. I'm actually gradually going to kind of slow things down in the summer. I'm obviously still seeing clients, always taking applications, always would love to help you out if you're interested. But when we get to those warmer months, I just really want to be able to enjoy and appreciate my hobbies. And even though, I do make some money from, my hobbies, like with sourdough, and I don't know, I just see a lot of really exciting projects happening that have nothing to do with my 9 to 5, right? And it's not really a 9 to 5, but like my typical work day. There's so many things that are happening outside of that I just want to put a lot of energy into. And so that's just something that kind of feels like a breath of fresh air, is like figuring out what that's going to look like and how I can invite community into that space. And it just makes me really excited for what's to come rather than just like panicking about each month because you don't know what's going to happen. Okay, so then how am I nourishing my spirit? I actually just started doing that this week. And I actually heard about it from a client that I've been working with, but she said that part of her morning routine is just to pray while she's going about her morning and invite God into her day and to let him work in her life. And that's just something I've also then started implementing. I think in my mind, a lot of the time having a spiritual practice, I think it needs to look like sitting down and doing a devotional and praying and reading the Bible. And of course, I love when I'm able to do that in my morning routine, and I try to get that in. But some mornings, if I'm already feeling panicked and the clock's hit 10 o'clock and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to get some things done. And who knows what I've been filling the rest of my morning with. It's just understanding that spiritual practice can look different day to day and still be just as important. And that's something I'm kind of realizing is it doesn't have to look like sitting down and doing a devotional and having everything be perfect every single day. But on those days where I get ahead of myself, I start working before I do my devotional, which isn't all the time, but some mornings that does happen. It's just like, okay, I need to reflect now. I need to just invite God into my day, let him work in the ways that he does. And it also just helps me feel much more calm and at ease. Okay. With all of that, I've talked for the last 16 minutes, rambling a little bit, but let's get into the Core 4 Method series. Again, today we are starting with protein. And so first, I just wanted to talk about what the Core 4 Method is. So what consists of a Core 4 meal? Okay, so this is when we look at our plate. You want to have a starchy carb, protein, healthy fat, and fiber in the form of a fruit or vegetable. So those are those 4 components where if you make up a meal and it has all 4 of those and you can identify all 4 of those, you're good to go. You're typically going to feel satisfied after the meal and feel content. But a piece of that we're talking about today, again, is protein. And protein is a huge, huge piece of our diet that I think a lot of people neglect. And especially women, I think we believe that, well, men need protein because usually historically, they've had more intense jobs, right? If they've been working outside or whatever that looks like for them. We think, oh, well, men need to have a lot of protein, but I can just get away with having, a couple slices of deli ham and a little piece of bread and a few blueberries and I'll be fine. And I think then we're now noticing women historically have also been undernourishing their body. So what does properly nourishing your body look like? It looks like feeling content after a meal and not constantly thinking about food. So if you notice day to day that you're constantly thinking about food, your stomach is always growling, you're in a bad mood, or you feel like you have no energy, you're under fueling your body. And with protein, I love to see now, and I think with the fitness industry, which I don't always compliment the fitness industry because that's a whole podcast episode in itself. But a piece of that I really do appreciate is that it's really gotten women to understand that lifting heavy weight, and it doesn't even have to be heavy weight, but just exercise and taking or eating enough protein is actually really, really important to our health, has been a huge positive shift in the right direction. Because like I said, for a long time, women just didn't eat enough, period. And for sure, they didn't eat enough protein. So what is protein? I'm going to try not to make this episode very scientific or very overwhelming with information, but I did want to just give a brief explanation of protein in itself. So protein is made up of amino acids. And amino acids allow your body to build and repair muscles, make hormones like serotonin, that's that happy hormone, melatonin, which helps you fall asleep, or thyroid hormones. And those thyroid hormones, a lot of women have hypo or hyperthyroidism. These hormones then help control your energy levels and your metabolism. Another piece is enzymes, which then strengthen tissues, they strengthen your muscle and your hair and your nails. So another piece of protein is creatine. Okay, so if you have been in the fitness space, you might have heard of a supplement version of creatine. And creatine is actually one of those bodybuilder type supplements that I would recommend if it's in its most natural and potent state. So of course you want to make sure you're taking a high quality creatine, but you can also get creatine from your food. So it's not just a supplement, but you can also get it in food. It's mostly found in beef, pork, tuna, salmon. Herring actually has the highest amount of creatine, cod, and then milk also has creatine. And from those sources, you're really only getting about like 1.4 to 2.3 grams of creatine, where your body then naturally will create 2 grams of creatine. But your goal, if you're somebody who is lifting weights, is to have 20 grams of creatine per day for a limited amount of time, and then 3 to 5 grams after that. So for a period of time, if you're really trying to increase your strength, build muscle, creatine is actually a very, very important piece of this. And protein and creatine, in my mind, kind of go together. Although creatine doesn't have protein in it, but creatine is a part of that tissue of like beef. And that's what's going to then help your body build that muscle. And so those two, just in my mind, like I said, they go really well together. But with this, protein is also a great piece of balancing your blood sugar. So while I was preparing for this podcast, I'm like, okay, I talk a lot about how protein can balance your blood sugar, but how, right? So there's a study done with type 2 diabetics, and they found that having a diet high in protein actually lowers the amount of glucose in your blood, and it improves the control that you have over your glucose levels. And so with this, it's really important that if you are a type 2 diabetic, or if you're a diabetic like type 1, or if you just want overall good health and a balanced blood sugar, that you are consuming enough protein. And you can really tell this by the cravings that you have. So I'm going to give you a little piece that I work on with clients, and I really think it'd be huge if you implemented this into your life. I don't share this everywhere, but if you have a sugary craving, that is a sign that your blood sugar levels are not balanced. Means, okay, you should probably up the protein in your diet. If you are having starchy food cravings, so if you want like all the chips and the crackers, and that is a sign then that you don't have enough mineral-rich salt in your water, or mineral-rich water and electrolytes, so you're dehydrated. And those cravings actually tell you a lot about your body, and it allows you to, again, have that mind-body connection. And I'm going to talk about that later on as well when it comes to knowing how much protein your body needs. But keep that in mind. If you have a sugary craving, blood sugar's out of whack, increase the protein. I was actually talking with a client about this too, where I'm like, what type of cravings do you typically get? And she's like, well, after school, I want everything sweet. And I'm like, okay, but what I'm going to tell you to do is when you crave something sweet, actually eat something savory. And by savory, of course, I'm meaning protein, because your body is like, ooh, things are not normal. I'm going to, throw a craving because I need something. At this point, I just need energy. So I just need something. And for me, I always am going to tell clients to push the protein first and then balance it out, right? And make that core 4 snack or core 4 meal. But there's a couple of questions that I always seem to come up when I talk about protein, and so I wanted to dive into those as well. So the first one being, how much protein do you actually need in a day? So there's a different variations of this. Most people will generically say you need 1 gram per pound body weight. I think that can be a lot of protein if you're not exercising at all. So what I typically recommend is you need 0.6 grams of protein per body weight, pound body weight. So you're going to take 0.6 times your body weight in pounds. That gives you how many grams of protein you need during a day. If you are moderately active, you're going to do 0.8 times body weight in pounds. And then if you're highly active, I recommend 1 times pound body weight. And then I would always, obviously if you're like a bodybuilder, you're probably not listening to this podcast if you are, but hey, if you are, you need more protein than that, because you're probably in the gym for 2 hours plus a day. You should be up more on like that 1.4 times body weight equals how many grams you should have, if not more than that. Now, I typically wouldn't recommend eating more than 200 grams of protein per day. And of course, this is very person specific. I'm making a generalization. I don't know because I'm not personally talking and working with you. But even when it comes to men, if you're doing more than 200 grams of protein a day, you might notice that you don't feel so good. And I would say it's almost impossible for women to get too much protein in a day, and especially men. If you're not hyperfixating on protein intake, it's really hard to get too much. So this is obviously kind of in that extreme case scenario, but if you notice symptoms like having really bad breath, or if you're constipated, and I say constipation because meat and high protein foods often lack fiber, which is what really keeps things flowing. So if you're eating a lot of protein, or if your protein goal is high based off of your weight, I would recommend drinking more water, eating more fruits and vegetables, or taking a fiber supplement, along with moving your body too, right? If you move your body, typically that gets things flowing in your digestive system, but also maybe a fiber supplement would be helpful in this case scenario. The other symptoms you could notice is like diarrhea, and that's definitely if when you're thinking about eating more protein, if your mind instantly goes to cheese and milk and whey protein shakes, you're probably going to be too regular and it's not going to be firm. And I know we're getting very granular, but it's something that it's important to know because that's also not a normal sign, right? That's a sign, okay, things are not normal in my body because things should not be soft. Okay. Whey protein, I'm going to talk about this now too. Whey protein is a dairy-based protein. So if you're lactose intolerant and you have been consuming a whey protein and you're bloated and you don't feel good, that's probably the reason. Wanted to say that because that's something that I didn't know for the longest time. Other symptoms would be dehydration and then kidney damage, which makes sense because your kidneys are that filtration system for your body. Okay, so then when should you eat the most amount of protein? I always am going to be an advocate for eating the most protein in the morning, or at least eating like 25 to 30 grams of protein within like 30 minutes to about an hour of waking, which for some people, that's going to sound like a lot of protein. And this is definitely, again, person and food specific, because if you're like, well, then I'm just going to do, 3 scoops of my protein powder in my shake to get to 30 grams of protein, I'm going to say you're probably not going to feel super good after eating that or drinking that, because using supplemental protein to get to that goal, I never think makes you feel as good as if you were using whole foods to get to that goal. So for me, then what this looks like is I will typically do 3 eggs with about a cup of spinach, salt and pepper and turmeric on those. I will just do them on like a stovetop pan. I don't scramble them. I just fry them using ghee or beef tallow. But then I will do a slice of sourdough. I will toast it and then do about 1/4 a cup of Greek yogurt. And then I'll do some peanut butter and some blueberries and cinnamon on top. It's the breakfast I've been eating. It's been about the exact same for the last 4+ months. It's just always my go-to because I know I'm getting honestly over 30 grams of protein. A slice of sourdough has about 6 grams of protein. So if you're like, why do I feel so much better when making the switch to sourdough? Well, there's 2 components there. It's higher in protein than like a white Wonder Bread, and it's also fermented. Fermented foods are really good for the good bacteria in your gut. They help you keep you regular, and it also just takes some work to eat sourdough, so you also notice like you're chewing it more, which then stimulates your digestive system and makes it easier just for everything to go through. So that is my go-to, something I always do, but just think about it that way, right? You should really strive to have a lot of protein in the morning, and something that I think has helped a lot of my clients and myself included is by doing that calculation of how much protein you should be having and then dividing it by 4. And I say by 4 because I typically recommend 4 meals a day, 3 meals a day, including a really balanced snack and a protein-rich snack. So you've got your breakfast, your lunch, your snack, and then typically supper. And so when you divide those meals by that ultimate goal of protein, you know how much on average you need per meal. So for some of you, depending on weight, it might be more than 30 grams or less than 30 grams. Anything above 30 grams, I think is kind of pushing it a little bit too much. That's kind of like the limit. I'm like, okay, 30 grams is typically enough for most people. At least it's going to keep you full, keep you satisfied until your next meal. So with this, I've also added in a component to my workouts because I'm somebody who used to work out fasted, meaning I wouldn't eat anything before I went and moved my body. And for me, I typically do a pretty intense workout, especially now that I'm lifting weights again, but I will then take like a Go Macro homemade protein bar. And I say Go Macro, which I don't count macros, I don't watch that, but I love those protein bars. But I've learned how to make them at home and they taste so much better. And I actually just posted the recipe, so you can find that on my Instagram or TikTok. Those are so delicious. And so I'll take one of those with me, or a chomp stick or Greek yogurt. I'm just really trying to actually eat something before my workout, which is a fault of mine because I hadn't been doing that for a long, long time, especially because I work out around like 6 to 7 a.m. And so I'm not going to say I'm not hungry because I'm always typically wake up with a growling stomach, but I typically ignore that until after my meal because I don't like to go into a workout with a full stomach. But I notice if I have a protein focused little snack before, I feel so much better during my workout and feel so much better after. It's also just another way to get in more protein because most of us are lacking that. So then another question that I feel like comes up a lot, or a lot of people think, is like, well, protein is higher in calories and I'm watching my calories, and so that could be a concern of yours. If you are somebody who tracks in like a MyFitnessPal, or you really watch what you eat and analyze it to be numbers based, I'm not going to tell you what to do because you're not a client of mine. If you were, I would recommend we get away from that method, but for some people it works. And I've learned that just because I have an unhealthy, or I have had an unhealthy relationship with tracking food in the past, that doesn't mean that everybody has, but I would say a majority of people end up getting into an obsessive state when they do that. So instead of tracking your calories on your phone and just viewing calories as calories, we're actually going to then eat protein first on your plate. So this is really what's going to prevent overeating because protein fills you up faster. So if you are eating your plate and you notice you reach for the fruit first, I'm going to say, oh, let's not do that because that's going to spike your blood sugar levels. Let's go for that protein. So when you do that protein first, again, it stabilizes everything else. But if you're somebody who's like, well, I track and protein, is higher in calories, I can almost guarantee you're still going to meet your calorie goal for the day, or you're going to eat under because you're not like binge eating. You're not having all of these intense cravings for sugary or salty foods because protein is filling. So I just really think that it's a good method to think about eating protein first and then, obviously eating the rest of your meal if you can. Sometimes we have meals that are in a casserole and you can't like individually see each food group, but just really putting an emphasis on that protein again. So then another question I typically get to is, well, what should I eat? Like, what's high in protein? I am typically one to recommend an animal-based protein source. And that would be like your steaks, your hamburger, your chicken, your turkey, your fish would be another option. I really think that is a great form of protein, and your body metabolizes that really well, and it's really good to translate then into muscle stored in your body. However, I know obviously people are vegan and vegetarian, and so with that, there are some really good options for that too. So edamame is really high in protein, tofu, tempeh, hummus, and whole wheat crackers or pasta, or Ezekiel bread if you've ever heard of that. It's a very grainy, seedy bread, which is high in protein. Hemp hearts, chia seeds are great. And then also a red or yellow lentil pasta. This is actually a swap I've made, even though we're not vegetarian or vegan. It's just so much higher in protein than even a whole wheat pasta. And so what we'll do is a serving of that is actually like 16 grams, or we'll do a chickpea pasta, which is 23 grams per serving, which is really high for a pasta. So I love those options. If you are vegan or vegetarian, you're going to notice it can be really hard to get enough protein. That's just where then I would recommend eat more than you think you probably need, especially edamame. I've actually started like topping our salads with those, and they're really great. They're not super high in fat, and they're just like a very good source of protein. With both though vegan or vegetarian options, you want to find something high quality. You can get really low quality tofu. I've seen it all over. I personally would probably never buy my tofu from like a Walmart. I've gotten it from Trader Joe's before. It's pretty good, or like a Natural Grocers. It doesn't mean you have to buy the most expensive one, but just make sure it's sourced really well, and that it's going to be not something that is then highly processed. Because unfortunately for vegans and vegetarians, they really try to push like the protein powders, like the vegan protein powders, because it's just another way for you to get protein, which is really, that's great. But at the same time, sometimes those can be higher, more processed foods and less quality foods. So always just things to look at that I want to remind you of. So then lastly, we're going to finish this up with how do you track your protein? So again, like I had said, I personally would never recommend to a client to start tracking their food intake in like a MyFitnessPal, or I don't know what the app I used, but I used an app for over 2 years. If you haven't heard my full story, that's the first episode I ever recorded. But for like 1.5 to 2 years, I strictly tracked my food, and it became a very unhealthy obsession. I'm still at the point where I could look at anything and tell you how many calories are in it, just because I did that so consistently, which is why, I think it's important to say that's why I don't recommend it. So if you are kind of like me, or in the past it's not been healthy for you, or honestly, if you're like, how the heck am I going to have time to track my food in MyFitnessPal? Like, I'd rather just grow that mind-body connection. I want to tell you how you can do that. So with that mind-body connection, it's just very important that you're listening to your body's signals. And obviously this requires you to have a little bit awareness of what your body does when it's not properly, fueled. So for some people, if they're really hungry and they can't really tell, they're like, I think I'm hungry, but I don't know. I would say most symptoms come in the form of like a headache, low energy, you're just exhausted. You could take a nap by 9:00 a.m. You have mood swings, you're shaky, jittery. Hangry is always the term that I use, because I get very hangry if I haven't eaten enough, especially had enough protein that day. I notice my body is like in that state where I don't want to be talked to, don't want to be messed with, because I'm just not a happy or pleasant person. And so understanding what your body tells you when you're hungry. So that's something I think it would be important to pay attention to, of like, okay, what signal does my body show me? Again, probably most common is like your stomach growling. So if you notice by 10 a.m. that your stomach is growling, or you're having one of those hunger signals, you probably did not have enough protein for breakfast. All right. And then if you would get an intense sugar craving, or, salty craving by 3 p.m., you probably didn't eat enough protein at lunch. So that would be a great time to add in a protein-rich snack. And then lastly, if you are always craving a bedtime snack, or your stomach growls by the time you're getting into bed, you probably didn't have enough protein for supper. I also want to throw in, like, it's okay for your stomach to growl sometimes, right? We shouldn't always constantly be in a state of fullness. Not saying you should get to the point where you're miserable because you're so hungry, but at the same time, it's okay for your stomach to growl. Sometimes it doesn't even mean that you're hungry, so that's why those other signs are really important, of your mood, your energy, your headaches, or whatever that is. Because I've definitely noticed, like, I'll eat plenty, but my stomach is rumbling, and that's also a sign that your digestive system is working and things are getting digested in your stomach, which is causing it to growl and rumble. So understand the other symptoms than growling for you. But that is just really what I think is so important for people to know about protein, that they probably, I would for sure say I didn't know most of this until a few years ago. And so just know that, like, As your body changes and adapts, you're probably going to either need more or less protein, but that calculation is so, so important. So I just wanted to remind you of that again, is do that calculation, right? We're not tracking it in MyFitnessPal, but really just think, okay, I'm going to do more protein than my body or than I think my body needs because that's probably the perfect amount. I'd rather you would go over the amount of protein you need than under, because your body's just going to feel so much better when you've actually eaten enough. And over time too, you're going to get to know your body very well, and you're also going to understand how much it needs to feel good and function well. So with time, you're going to notice benefits of having more protein, or you're going to notice days when you don't have as much, you don't feel good. Your body will definitely communicate that with you, but it really comes down to understanding your body and allowing your body to give you those signals. And that was something that was very foreign to me, of like, how am I going to slow down enough to actually notice like how I'm feeling? Like, how am I actually feeling? You know, if you're one of those people where you're like, I don't know the last time I sat in 5 minutes of silence and didn't scroll my phone, that might be a good choice, because your body's probably going to communicate something to you during that time of like, oh my gosh, I'm really thirsty. My throat is really dry, or whatever that is. It's like, okay, your body actually wants to work with you, not against you. And when you're able to understand that, I think we start to respect our bodies a lot more and actually want to eat enough too. So, wow, that was a lot of information. I feel like I talked a mile a minute, but I've also gotten feedback that I talk really slow when I do the podcast. I could talk a little bit faster, but I really hope you gained something from this episode and that you've got tangible takeaways from this. Again, I'm going to continue on with the Core 4 Method series in the following week. So we'll have 3 more podcasts about each of those other food groups because they're so darn important. So if you're interested in following along with my life outside of the podcast, you can find me at Nourish with Bailey on Lemon8, on Instagram, on TikTok, and then just Bailey Seaton on Facebook. I would love to connect with you. I also have all of my information in the description of today's episode, so you'll find my email down there. Please don't hesitate to reach out or DM me. If you're interested in one-on-one coaching or getting some support individually, I would love to talk to you and answer any questions you have for me. A big piece I think that comes up every time I talk about food is your relationship with food, and that's because it's so important. And it's really hard to want to adequately nourish your body when your mind is telling you you're not deserving of it. And a huge piece of what I do with clients is that relationship with food. So regardless of where you're falling on that, spectrum, if you have a really good relationship with food, but you don't know what to eat, or if you have a struggling relationship with food and you really struggle with overeating, right? I've helped all kinds of women, and I would love to talk to you and see how I can support you through that. But with that, we're going to close this episode in prayer, and then you can get on with the rest of your day. So dear Lord, just thank you so much for this day. Thank you for the warmer weather and the sunshine today. I just ask that you be with whoever is listening to this podcast, and that they just leave feeling so inspired and encouraged and motivated to eat more and properly fuel their body, spirit, and mind, knowing that, when we have all 3 of those in true alignment, we're really going to feel so good. I just ask for protection over them, regardless of where they're going, what they're doing today, and just continued support, in that they feel supported in every area of their life, and that if they have a hard decision that they're trying to make, or they feel confused with their purpose or their direction, that you just provide some insight and guidance, and you just communicate that with them. And again, make them feel so supported and loved. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. So with that, I will talk to you again next Wednesday. Bye. For years and years, I struggled with bloating and chronic pain. And honestly, that was a huge piece of my college years, was trying to figure out what the heck was going on in my body and how I could fix it. I first started the more Western medicine route by taking medications. Eventually, my kidneys weren't functioning properly, and I decided it was time to stop them completely. So with that, I started on my own 3-year journey of figuring out what foods made me feel good, how I could properly fuel my body, lose some excess weight and water retention. I noticed because of the chronic pain, I was always bloated. I also always felt puffy, and that is a sign of water retention. And when I was able to decrease the inflammation in my body, I also noticed that I lost a lot of weight. I was also able to feel good again in my skin and feel confident, but that didn't go without struggling with my relationship with food and exercise, which is why I started doing one-on-one coaching with women through my one-on-one coaching program, Nourish to Flourish. In Nourish to Flourish, we focus on healing your relationship with food and healing your body, knowing that both of those are so important to improving your overall health. For me, I'm so passionate about helping women heal because I did it independently and didn't feel like I had anyone to support me along the way. So if you struggle with your relationship with food, or if you are chronically inflamed and you just never feel physically good, I want to talk to you. So if you look in the description of today's episode, I have a link for one-on-one coaching. Go ahead and fill out that application. Again, this never locks you into working together, but it just gives us a chance to talk more about what this looks like and see if it's the right fit for you. So let's ditch the scale, stop counting calories, and let's nourish to flourish.